Welcome to the Future is Borderless podcast with David Nilssen. We feature top entrepreneurs and thought leaders from around the world, those who bring a global mindset and a unique perspective to their life and business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hey everyone, this is David Nilssen here, and I'm the host of this podcast. The Future is Borderless was created to connect with business leaders from around the world who have what I refer to as a borderless mindset. And the purpose here is to share ideas, new innovations, best practices, things that will help power growth both personally and professionally so that we can thrive in a rapidly changing world. Now, this episode is brought to you by Doxa Talent. Doxa helps businesses to source full-time, highly skilled workers from all over the world. And as a result, the companies can scale faster, increase margin, and improve culture. If you want to learn how to grow your business with offshore talent, simply go to doxatalent.com. Now, today is going to be a really interesting conversation. I had a chance to talk with Verne Harnish, who has spent the last 4 decades helping companies scale. He's the founder of the Entrepreneurs Organization, which you've heard about from many of my guests. EO is a peer-to-peer learning organization exclusively for entrepreneurs, which has grown to an astounding 220 chapters worldwide, 19,000 members. He's also the founder of and CEO, I should say, of ScalingUp, which is a global executive education and coaching company with hundreds of partners on 6 continents. He's a highly rated educator and speaker, and I've had a chance to actually see him speak at least a half a dozen times. And each time I walk away with really actionable takeaways. Somewhere along the way, Verne found the time to write many books, including Mastering the Rockefeller Habits, Scaling Up, and his most recent book, which we go deep into on this particular podcast, Scaling Up Compensation. His insights and methodologies have influenced thousands of companies around the world, helping them to streamline operations, improve their strategies, and drive growth. So listen in for this awesome conversation on the future of Borderless with Verne Harnish. Welcome to the Future is Borderless, Verne.
Yeah, David, always a pleasure spending time with you. And by the way, seriously, thank you for all that you've given back to EO and the leadership you provided. Hey, even your referral in of our new CEO of the organization. So it's much appreciated.
I appreciate that. I hope to make a small dent. And actually, I want to talk a little bit about EO towards the end. But actually for today, I thought it'd be fun to just focus on compensation. There's, I think, your latest book, Scaling Up Compensation, is one that I found fascinating. And I thought would be a really good topic because so many people are struggling to attract and retain people. And there's no question that compensation plays a significant role in doing so. So I thought maybe we'd start with, as I was going through your book, one of the early themes was aligning compensation with core values and long-term vision. And I'm just curious, like you share that like a well-designed compensation system, and these are my words, not yours exactly, can be a powerful tool for reinforcing a desired culture and the behaviors within your organization. Can you share a little bit more about sort of your thoughts on this and how business leaders could kind of move towards that?
Yeah. Well, it starts with our first principle, which is to be different. And that's what Michael Porter said. I mean, you really don't have a strategy, including a compensation strategy, if it's not different from everybody else in your industry. And what's most critical is that compensation system is not when you copy from somebody else, but that it aligns with your value proposition in the marketplace, what it is that the customers want you to do, and that aligns with your culture. If you've got a dog eat dog, hey, you eat what you kill kind of culture that Lincoln Electric does, then their pay as you go, compensation system that would just drive everybody else crazy, would seem draconian, but it aligns with both what they want to deliver to the customer and the kind of culture that they've created. On the flip side, if you've got one that truly is team oriented, like they do at the Container Store, most retailers have some kind of a spin, some kind of a commission program. They don't have a penny of it, David, because it would be counter again to what they know they want to do for their customers, which is nobody ever to fight over a customer. And they just want to pay people twice as much and just take compensation off the table. which aligns with their core value of one great employee replaces three good. And so let's just start by paying people twice as much. So being clear about your value proposition and what your core values are is a starting point. But most people are simply looking at surveys of what this position is worth and what everybody else is doing and copying them. And that is not different.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I remember years ago, we used to do the same thing you just described, which is, hey, we're going to grab the pay scale report for this particular role in this particular area. And what we also found is not only were we not unique, we were always 6 months behind because the data was in arrears. And so you always had to adjust up from there. But actually the container story, that was one of the stories obviously in your book. And the thing that I took from that, which is sort of aligned with what you said, is that they were really transparent about how they were compensating their people. And they really wanted to sort of increase benefits and the direct value to them. I've seen other companies in Seattle, the 70K CEO is there and very clear that they wanted to pay people really well. Like, tell me about Container Store though, because I always think, I always hear this and I think the capitalist response is always, well, then your prices are going to have to go up because you're going to have to afford those people. But in this particular case, you saw it directly impact performance.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Kip and Garrett, the co-founders, would come to the MIT program often. I had them teach for me many times when I was running what's now called the EMP program. And so again, it's not anything I just read. I mean, I've heard from those guys directly. They've been on our stage. And the essence is this decision. And I think we're all facing it right now. Would you rather have less people paid more who are smart, or more people who are paid less that are less smart? I'm not going to say dumb.
It feels like a leading question.
Yeah, it is. No, I know. It is a leading question. I mean, the answer should be obvious. And what we know from the research, every position in the company, starting with the CEO, when Fortune last year looked at the Fortune 500 performance, they found the difference between the good and the great CEOs in terms of performance was a factor of 2.8 to 1, almost 3 to 1. In every position, there is one employee that can do the work of 3. Literally, as Bill Gates said, one great programmer can replace 10,000. We've got a client that's got a cutter. They're out in the factory, they cut paper. This guy can do the work of 10. And so Kip and Garrett said, look, let's just take compensation off the table. Let's get it right and out of sight, which is one of the 2 foundational ideas in the book. But our number one core value is 1 great replaces 3 good. And so from literally a performance standpoint, and we think the key number is gross margin dollars divided by full-time equivalent, or gross margin dollars divided by total compensation that you're paying. It really is the number you've got to look at. Their performance is better. So if it's 3 times better, but you're only paying twice as much, your total labor cost as a percent of revenue, gross margin, whatever you want to look at, is actually less. But it only works if you do the training. I mean, they're famous for 235 hours of training the first year, where the average in retail is 7. So you're not going to do this if you're not willing to really invest in getting better, smarter people. You know, where you really see it in the US is Costco versus Sam's Club. You know, Costco was constantly, crushed that Walmart store. And part of it is that if you look at every position at Costco, it's mirror at Sam's Club. Costco pays anywhere between 40 and 80% more. But any factor you want to look at, profit, revenue per square foot, any way you want to look at it, their performance is at least 3x. So again, they're seeing exactly what the Container Store recognized when they launched.
Yeah, I have a real personal connection to that because I have a family member that went to work for Costco simply because their benefits were so strong. Not just their compensation, but their benefits for the family were so fantastic. Starbucks has the same sort of story there too. Benefits are a big part of their story.
Well, at Starbucks, even though they're under quite a bit of pressure, Laxman is from Howard Schultz. They had a rough quarter. I think we're all facing it because of inflation, and people's spending really has been reduced. I don't know about you, but overnight, um, our clients are really feeling how difficult it is to make a sale this year than it was last year. But I think what was important is Laxman, after working as a barista, came back and said, one of our top 3 initiatives is we're going to double the income of the baristas by 2025. He knows that that's the constraint. And if we don't get that addressed, now they're going to do it through $3 billion in savings. They're going to get that kind of 8% margin back. And I think a lot of that's going to come out of middle management.
Interesting. Let's talk about the other way. So you talked about the Container Store, which, you know, they have great compensation, great benefits, but in the book, you talk about the difference between wages and variable compensation and performance-based, really. You know, I think most of us are really clear how you do that in a sales role, right? Like you make a sale, you earn a commission, very similar. But then there's those non-revenue generating roles. Can you share some examples of ways that can be done well?
Yeah. Well, we address a whole piece of the book around whether it's variable or fixed. Again, comes back to a cultural thing.
Yeah.
You know, all the workers at Lincoln Electric is variable, and they're blue collar. Yet through that variable comp, they're able to earn 6 figures plus. They're some of the most highly compensated blue collar manufacturing workers in the world. But it would look draconian. I mean, there's no vacation pay, there's no sick pay. You only make what you deliver. It's really almost, straight performance based. And if you make an error, it comes out of your comp. But you're not trying to hire all 8 billion people on the planet. You're just trying to hire a few thousand who say, you know what, I love that. Bring it on. I know I can perform and I can drive what I need to. But where I think folks get it wrong is around the bonus plan, the bonus piece.
Okay.
And there we're pretty adamant. You shouldn't pay a bonus more than once a year. You know, some have it kind of a quarterly approach. And the problem is it starts feeling like that is their comp. And bonus is supposed to be just that. It's supposed to be getting you that additional boost in productivity or whatever numbers. And you know what? The research is clear. It's not. Whenever I ask entrepreneurs like the EOers in Halifax, how many of you guys give out bonuses? And I said, then how much do you feel like it's just a giveaway? Are you really getting anything back in return? And the universal answer is no.
Yeah.
And so we're actually, and it came from Dan Pink's work in the book Drive. I had these elaborate formulas of bonus plans and variable comp based on our profitability. And we then host Dan Pink. And afterwards, because he talked about how commissioned work is less creative than, for instance, non-compensated, non-commissioned work. And my team came to me afterwards, David, and sat me down and said, look, Verne, we don't like this up and down variable notion of our comp. We're not entrepreneurs like you are. We can't live with those ups and downs that you can seem to stomach. We're not going to work any harder either than we already are. We just like to know. We'd like to be paid fair. Remember, we say, fair, not equal. We just want to be paid really fair and know what we're going to make every day, every month, every year, and not get whipsawed around. And I'm like, you know what? Done deal. I didn't like doing all those calculations anyway. You just hire great people and they're going to do great work.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? I actually had a similar experience with the business I actually joined EO with years ago. I'm on the board still, but not operationally responsible. But, there was a point where we used to have these very complex bonus schemes. And they actually became, in some cases, they were motivating. And then when things didn't start out well, they actually became demotivating, right? And we just sort of realized at some point, you know what, we probably just need to pay really well in the market and just have high expectations and measurable goals. And it would take care of itself. And that's what we found. And it actually worked out really well for us. So I think I've lived that in one way, shape, or form.
You got it. Now, one of my if I really got to the kind of two key points of the book, let me just tell a couple of stories that
Please.
So one of them is I'll take you up to Connecticut to a company called, he's a white dealer, John Summers, who has a company called Allied Printing. They do commercial printing. It's not Meta, it's not Google, it's print. But he does something really, I think, cool. And by the way, that's what I technically call a shitty business. Typically it's got thin margins, but he does extremely well. He's really the best, I think, in the world. Part of the key is two things. One, people walk into your office constantly saying, hey, I want a career path. Now, a career path we think is just code for, boss, how could I make more money around here? And if the only way you can make more money is to be moved up in the organization into management, you got a problem. Because right now everybody's cleaning that middle out.
That's right.
And so instead, and then we also recommend, don't call it a career path. I don't know if anybody really wants to be that long at the company. It'd be great if they would. So we suggest the word success path. And the key is set it up so that somebody can make twice the market. Let's go back to that 2 to 1 than they could at any other firm in that position. So, John, a customer service rep starts at market. What the customer service rep for a printing company would make in Connecticut. And so it's good to know those numbers as a starting point. But then they can progress to make twice that in their success path. Now, if you can pay literally twice, and by the way, it's 6 figures, twice what they could make in that role anyplace else, they're not going anyplace, and they're going to feel they're compensated fairly. The same with, by the way, the print leads. They start at roughly market, but they can progress to make literally twice. Now, how can John do that relative to the competition? Because he realizes that the bigger print jobs that have got higher total gross margin dollars, they don't need 2 reps. They don't need 2 project leads. They just need their best. And so the way you move up is you're taking on more total gross margin dollars. You're taking on more important clients. And the analogy we like to use is professional athletes. There's no professional athlete I know that aspires really to move into management. They don't even really want, just a few maybe become coaches, and usually they're bad coaches. They just want to play for a better team. And that's how they generate more compensation. By the way, a sales rep start at 60,000. Here I can share these numbers, I can't the others, and can make up to 600,000. There's a 10x. The key is to give people titles within the position. And if you remember in the book, we use TMC, a company that has radiologists. It's a professional services firm out of Europe. You start as an apprentice, novice, beginner, all the way to guru and like mystic kind of thing. So people want to be promoted, but promote them within the position. So that's number one. The second thing John did, David, that I thought was brilliant. So look, people are already really paid well. He then has an annual bonus plan because he does want to get everybody aligned, think like an owner, as we talk about the business. And your piece of the bonus is equal to your percent of total comp. So first, if you're a better performer, you're making more, so you're going to get a bigger piece
of the bonus
pool. So it's like this triple win, 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 win. Now, but here's the difference. He only pays out 50% of it. The other 50% vests like stock over the next 5 years into 5 equal buckets, 10% each year for the next 5 years. And by the way, if you leave, you lose all of that. And it's Cialdini's. People do more to avoid a loss than to get a gain. And so the longer they're there, the bigger those future pots of money, the more signing bonus you would have to pay one of his people best salespeople, best printer, print lead, best customer service rep, to leave the company. Now, the last question is, but look, and he doesn't pay any interest on that. So it's helping his cash flow. The question is, why aren't his employees mad at him? At some level, it's like, hey, boss, you're sitting on my money for up to 5 years. And what John has said to them, which I think is part of that transparency, he goes, look, what's the worst thing you do to a team? And that is lose star players. I mean, you want to destroy a professional sports team, lose their Messi, lose their Ronaldo, right? And because then everyone else is thinking, if they've left, maybe I should consider leaving.
Yeah.
And so he said, look, this system helps us keep our star players. So the burden doesn't fall on you. And you know what? They're like, boss, we can make twice as much as we can anyplace else. This bonus truly is bonus. And you know what else? It's a forced savings plan. Most people don't have my savings. Now he gets to, on their anniversary date, walk in like Santa Claus with a bucket of cash. Thank you for your 6th, 7th, 8th, 10th year of service. So I think John's really nailed, and he's not spending any more money on comp. He's just got less people paid more instead of more people paid less who want to stay. And I think that's what's key.
Yeah, I think that's pretty impressive. I think about the vesting that you talked about, right? I get half my bonus now, half of it over 5 years. It's the same thing we do with 401ks, right? We use those in a vesting schedule with them to make sure that we're creating a retention benefit. But the difference is I can count cash differently than I think about my retirement plan. I really like that. I want to talk about equity for a second, because it made me think of, in my previous business, we had an equity plan and we gave equity out to people. And I just got this impression they just didn't value it unless they were in a senior role where the quantity was enough. And so we ended up moving more towards cash over equity for that reason. Have you seen something similar, or do you have a perspective on how to use those or when to use those differently?
Yeah, first of all, you're absolutely right. And part of the challenge too, of giving equity out to your private company, is you end up with liquidity issues. I mean, that's what happened to Jack Stack. He really was big in equity. He would value the company every year, but all of a sudden, some employees are like, hey, Jack, I want to buy a house. Hey, Jack, I've got some kids and need to go to college. I really need to cash in this stock. And so we ended up having to create entities they could exit, so they had the liquidity. So I have really been on a tirade. It's even one we had a little bit about with EO. I think where Wall Street has really damaged us as entrepreneurs, and they've done it simply so they can rape and pillage themselves, is they've convinced us not to go public. We used to go public at 40 million in revenue. I mean, Microsoft went public early, Apple went public early, Outback Steakhouse went public early. And I just got back from Japan last year, where we've got 2,000 EO members. It's growing crazily. They go public at 10 million in revenue in Japan. And in the book, I mentioned one of our clients at 3 million went public. I think here's what we're up against. KKR, the Wolf of Wall Street, is now the darling. 10 years ago, they gave all of their workers, and they're mainly 28 industrial firms, stock as a public company. And what's beautiful about the stock market is every dollar you take to the bottom line, the market gives you liquid, $15 to $50. And as Bill Gates said, he didn't go public because he needed the money. He let the public give his people pay raises. And that's what Outback Steakhouse did. When I was with Jim Cannon, the co-founder, on Necker Island a year and a half ago at Richard's Place, I said, Jim, I featured you in our book, Scaling Up Compensation. I said, how critical was it that you were public almost day one, launching that restaurant chain? This isn't, again, a tech company, it's restaurants. And how critical was that comp plan to you overnight becoming the third largest and best performing? He said, Verne, you can't speak enough to how critical that was. And it allowed 20-year-olds to become millionaires within 10 years. And there's no way, he says, a private company, we could have provided that kind of incentive as a restaurant chain. So I think if you're going to give equity out, I think you got to seriously consider going public. And I think going public via SPAC, as our friend McKeel Haggerty did, the family still has control. Yet they're working now with the $3 billion market cap, which gives them much better currency for Keel to attract the senior talent that he needs without worrying about liquidity. So sorry, it's a long answer to, I think, a very important question you're asking.
Yeah, that's okay. I want to go back and dig in on that a little bit because, right now, you're right. Very, very few entrepreneurs that I know, and I know we know a lot, are not thinking about going public.
I know.
And SPACs, actually, which were popular last decade, have kind of fallen. You don't hear about them anymore, but that was something that people were starting to leverage a little bit more. So I'm just curious, why you said the public markets have ruined us. Like, what's the shift that occurred? Why aren't people thinking about it more?
Yeah. Well, first of all, let's clear up on SPACs. We did as many SPACs in 2023 as they did prior to the pandemic. And we're on schedule to do as many in 2024. There was just this crazy blip during the pandemic when it went from 80 or 90 a year, which has been pretty standard, to several hundred. And look, there were a lot of really dumb deals done, which gave SPACs a bad name. But they are the best way for you to inexpensively get public. And you're not giving the investment bankers 80% banking fees. And people like 80% banking fees. Well, that's what they do when they take you public. They take you out at $15. They know it's worth 40. Yeah. So it goes to 40 that day. By the way, who are the only people that get to sell it? The investment bankers and their friends. Yeah. You and your friends are locked in for 6 months to 12 months. And so they essentially just took 80% bankers' fees of the value that's taken off the table that day. And that's what's happened. Wall Street has said, hey, let's not let the public get the value of the company if it goes 40 million, then up to 400 million in revenue. Yeah. Let through private equity, through our own investment banking, let's reap, I'm going to say rape those benefits for ourselves. And then when they go public, it's a second, rip-off kind of thing. So that's one of the reasons why Wall Street got negative about SPACs, because it was cutting them out of their big money banks. And so I'm glad. That's why I think Japan's on fire. I think it's why Warren Buffett went all in Japan last year, and that's why I love visiting the place. Yeah. I think they get it.
Yeah, I went to Japan twice this year, both times with EO, and I had a chance to meet with the regional leaders there. It's really impressive how fast that they've grown. And it really, you said it, and I actually described this to somebody the other day. It is the place where people know if you want to go public in Japan, you have to become an EO member. It's like now it's sort of part of the culture, which I think is so great.
I do too.
I appreciate the commentary on this, because I've been hearing some different narrative around SPACs, has me thinking that that's something that's worth looking into a little bit more, because I didn't recognize that the trend had recovered. So that's interesting. But
yeah, you can go to SPACresearch.com, and that's where they, where they monitor everything. And again, if you're not a good, solid operating company, then you shouldn't go public anyway.
Totally.
But if you truly are a good operating company, man, it is a good way to give your people pay raises. Hey, the second story I wanted to share, if I can, and there I take everybody to Australia. That's an EO member, Michael Hagan, out of Brisbane. Okay. He, it's not Google, Facebook, it's Mini Movers. I mean, they move furniture. They've got 450 employees, and the key, I want to come back to how we started this. you've got to understand your value proposition in setting your comp plan. And by the way, what does that really mean is what is your brand's promise? And everything's got to work from there. If you don't deliver what the customer wants you to deliver, then you don't have money to pay your employees. Let's get real fundamental. So Michael Reagan made one decision, David, that changed everything in what I'm going to call technically another shitty business. I mean, how do you find movers? How do you find anybody that wants to physically move furniture in that heat waves that you get in Australia?
Yeah.
It's a mess. So here's what he did. If you go to his website, Mini Movers, you're going to see right there on the homepage what's called their workmanship guarantee. Okay. And you start with, if you want to start figuring out your comp plan, you start with the question, what is the top 3 things the customer wants us to do? And it doesn't have to be complicated. The first is, I just don't want you to break anything. I don't want you to break it. I don't want you to scratch it. I don't want to mark. All right. Number 2, I'd like you to be on time. But you know what? If you're a little late and it means that you took better care, hey, fine. And then number 3, that's why there's always 3 promises. Could the movers just be polite, well dressed, make sure they have the covers over their shoes so they're not like dragging stuff into the house. We're not asking for a lot. Okay. Now let's take that first one. So in Mike's industry, the way it's dealt with is insurance. And everyone's got an insurance product that covers any of the losses or damage that your people or your trucks might cause. And by the way, it's pretty standard. It's 4% of revenue. So Mike's like, wait a second. Why am I paying that to the insurance companies? Why don't I self-insure? And anything that we damage will come out of that pool. Whatever's left, I'm going to split among our 450 movers. Now, by the way, that represents about 4,000 Aussie dollars a year. And that is enough extra for him to be able to get a much better person who is conscientious, but more importantly, who now is policing who? Way before the customer is going to get upset, way before Mike, the movers, they're there helping each other, supporting each other, cross-training, and the HR laws are draconian in Australia. You can't get rid of anyone. But trust me, if there's a mover that's causing lots of, damage, that's taking money out of every other mover's pocket, they know how to get rid of a mover. Okay, just don't tell me about it. I'm going to make that mover's life so Mike doesn't even have to deal with it now. And by the way, the workmanship guarantee is, hey, we're going to deliver it in better shape. It'll be dusted. Remember, we had to take the legs off. When we put it back on, they're going to be tighter than they were. And we have to take pictures of all the marks because we don't want to get blamed for it. We know how to fix that stuff. If you're okay with it, we'll fix some of that stuff. You're going to get it back in better shape. Now, think about this. Because they're so good, they've got the workmanship guarantee. They're able to charge about 9% more. The market, the pricing is clear. When you're the luxury, you can do about 9% more. Nobody cares. The move was 10,200 versus 10,900. I'm not gonna. Your reputation's so good. Number 2, your marketing costs are less. They have such word of mouth, and they're getting all the best people. There you go. You just took what we call a vicious cycle with trying to get people who just will show up on time and, wear our uniform, to a virtuous cycle where Mike's able to stand back and let it self-manage. Now, little side note, Mike got divorced. His wife got the business. So if anyone goes and fact checks this just happened. And he's off to the races in another business, but the story still holds in terms of what they were able to do. So you always start with, what is our promise to the customer? And your comp has to align with that. And that's what we mean at the very beginning about not copying somebody else.
Yeah, I think it's super creative. I love how the system that he put in place incents the right behavior and it creates pressure when it doesn't work well, right? Like
Right.
that's what it should be, a catalytic mechanism to sort of boost business performance. That's a fantastic example.
David, you said it quicker than I did. I did need to take that long. Take
No, I
much,
love the
much
example. I think
more
it's really helpful.
uh,
I love the idea of self-insuring. I think that's so smart in that particular case. Yeah, brilliant. Let's look, I try to keep the podcast to about 30, 40 minutes. I know we're
yeah,
bumping up on that, but I think this is really great content. I want to just briefly ask you about AI. Like, this is a really interesting time, right? So you've sort of
yeah,
dedicated your life to helping entrepreneurs scale their businesses. AI is a super hot topic. I think there's, on one hand, people that believe that it's
yeah,
going to kill all jobs and we're going to all just be figuring out what to do with ourselves in 5 years, and others that really believe it's going to amplify human potential, to use a lack of a better term.
yeah.
I'd be curious your perspective on that debate. And then more importantly, what are you and your scaling up coaches doing to help people think about what the future of work is?
Yeah. Well, first, we're recommending a book. There's two books. I have book recommendations for everything. And it's three University of Toronto professors. You know, University of Toronto has really been the epicenter of helping business apply AI. And their latest book is called Power and Prediction.
Power and
And
prediction.
and what it really does is it delineates what are the two things we all as business people need AI to do. And that is to help us better predict and to give us more power. So what does it mean in a practical sense? I just submitted my latest article to Chief Executive Magazine called A Player plus AI. That's the winning formula. And in essence, AI is extra employees. It is driving the productivity of your existing employees up 25 to 100%. So now you can really have considerably less people paid more with a total lower labor cost. So it plays right into that opening formula that we talked about. And that's how it's used. And what it means then is our latest book, 12 Habits of Valuable Employees, because everybody writes about what it means to be a great leader, but nobody writes about what do you have to do to be a better employee or team member. And it's really based around four attributes. The first is will. That's something we as humans bring that AI is quite, it's going to be a while before it's able to bring that to the table. The second is that values match that we talked about. The third is actually then delivering on the final results. AI can help us, but it's not as good yet in the final delivery. Even Elon Musk found that in his factories. Skill, though, is the fourth, and that's where AI is really good. So the more that we as humans can deliver on the first three and let AI help us with the four, that's really the right combination. So I'm super excited about. Now, what do you do in a practical sense? And we're doing it ourselves. One of our values is practice what we preach. We are encouraging every EO member to partner with their local university. My daughter goes to Webster in St. Louis. Webster has a very active data analytics department. So it's not going to be called AI. It's going to be called data analytics. And you go meet the professor. And so JD Ewing sells office furniture, David. He's out of Pittsburgh. Yeah. He's been doing this for 5 years. He was cool before it was cool. And what he did is he goes to the professor and he says, look, your students probably want a real world AI initiative. I have several at my company. And he pays him $10,000. That's it.
Yeah.
And by the way, the first initiative was, and get this, where should I put my next warehouse? All right, my next distribution center. He's in Pittsburgh. So the students, because this is a young person's world, and they have no biases. They just grabbed all of his 20 years of data, what he sold to whom, blended with all kinds of other data, demographics, movements of people. And they came back and said, Houston, Texas. If you can be at the intersection of these three highways. That's going to be best. And we've already looked, and this building's available. That's the building you should be in. And you're going to need this many square foot. JD's like, wow. And he did. And the decision's been perfect. That's a prediction decision. The next one was, all right, what's the largest movie studio? Netflix. Why? Because they have all this data.
Yeah.
So he spends a lot of money trying to guess what's going to be the hot color in furniture in 2024. What should be the right woods? What would be the new designs?
Yeah.
He asked the students for 10,000 to build an algorithm that now is 80% accurate. It predicted that American elm would be the hot wood color in 2023. By the way, AI then created all the designs and the images. He didn't have to build the furniture and take photos of it. AI actually is his bot, and this beautiful woman who then, if you see the videos on his website, explains American elm is the hot, by the way, wrote the scripts. So the scripts, the photos, the designs, the bot that's even delivering it is all AI. His third then, he used an off-the-shelf, now he's brought it internally, Olivia, is taking hundreds of hours off his people's table, just answering customers' questions. Hey, what's the stock availability? What's the price? She is able to even recognize the style with which I asked the question and give me an answer back in my style. And people think she's real, and it's saved them hundreds of hours. So these are some real practical ways that a guy selling office furniture has been using AI now for 5 years to really up both the power and the prediction within his company.
I think that's amazing. I mean, it just shows you the potential.
Yeah.
But going back to what you said earlier, I believe in the same world, human plus AI. I
Yeah.
love the way that you frame it in terms of power and prediction. And
Well,
I imagine
these professors that you see. I try to give everybody credit, David. I hardly know anything. I just kind of integrate.
Well, I think you do a great job of at least taking those best practices and bringing them to the forefront. I think that's the most important. Who cares? I've never had an original thought in my mind or ever. So I just like to share other people's ideas, which is why I'm interviewing you.
Thanks.
Hey, Verne, just to close this out, I'm really curious. I always love talking to business leaders about what they're trying to learn about, how they're investing in their own development, like what's their latest sort of passion. I just would love to finish by learning a little bit about what you're trying to learn about today.
Yeah. Well, I think the fastest growing interest group in EO is the EO psychedelics and beyond WhatsApp group. I joined it a few months ago. I did my first 2 legal with the Beckley retreat, the Beckley Institute in Jamaica, psilocybin journeys. Part Native American. I've always felt like I need to go do a ceremony.
Yeah.
And it was as life-changing as they said. It's like they say, you can do 10 years of therapy in, a 4-hour session. And they do it right with the prep for 4 weeks, the integration 6 weeks later. I think what all that means is what we need to get in touch with is that which AI is pretty far from, which is our need to get mindful, our need to get more conscious, our need to connect more in the world. And that's the human side of us that it'll be a while before I think AI gets there. So I think that movement is where we're all growing more between our ears. Because that's where the constraint is, that idea, the theory of constraints. And the reason I did it is I've got some really big things I want to do over the next 30 years. And I knew I needed to get cleaner between my ears in order to be able to make those things happen. So I think, interestingly enough, that's the growth area. The second, pricing. That's why I've been doing a lot of workshops around pricing. Compensation is just pricing internally. And pricing and comp are psychological, not logical decisions. So I think human psychology and all that surrounds that is the area for more learning.
Awesome. Well, we'll leave it there. We've been
right.
listening to Verne Harnish, the founder of the Entrepreneurs Organization and the author of Scaling Up Compensation, which you should go out to Amazon and pick up. Obviously, we've talked about some of those concepts here, but Verne, where can people go to learn more about the work you do?
ScalingUp.com.
Awesome. And we'll put those in the show.
I made the same mistake we make fun of people of. I had the stupidest name for a company, Gazelles. Nobody could even spell it. So finally, we said everything's at one place. The name of the book, ScalingUp.com. There's free courses there. All of our tools are free. Free chapters, a lot of free stuff. You know, I'm very missional about helping out entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. And we'll make sure to put that stuff in the show notes. But thanks again for being on today's call.
David, and thank you for letting me kind of ramble with those longer answers. It's appreciated.
No, it's great. I think the illustrations are really important. So,
all right, take care.
Thank you for listening to the Future is Borderless podcast with David Nilssen. Be sure to click subscribe to future episodes so you can hear from more top entrepreneurs and thought leaders. And we'll see you again next time.